us here, and you have the ability to respond. I've been involved with Catholic radio for 15 years. I helped to start a station. I sit on a board. And one of the things that I still grapple with is, to whom are we speaking? So when you're programming and you're developing a programming schedule, you first kind of have to look out for the people that are going to support you, the 7% of Catholics who pay the bills and keep you on the air. But that's a very small group, and they're interested in a lot different things than maybe another group, which are new to the faith or kind of lukewarm, and you're trying to bring them along. And then there's even a larger group of people that are kind of peeking in and seeing what those Catholics are talking about, and people of goodwill that kind of want to learn about the faith. But the problem is you can only have one program on at a time. And it's hard to be all things to all people. So how do we do that? And then, how do we do that in a way that's not boring? And this is the critique from my own children. I have 5. And my wife and my friends is that they find a lot of Catholic radio boring. So I don't mean to imply that you can snap your finger and give me an answer, but who are we talking to, and how do we not be boring?
I think that's a great question. I had to grapple with that in 2004 when I was with Relevant Radio. I've been thinking about it ever since, and my first response is, now you know how our ordained ministers who have to preach to a large congregation feels. You've got 3 generations in most congregations, right? And it's a real challenge. Okay. So here I'll say a couple of things, and I think a full answer will start to unfold this afternoon as well. Okay. For right now, a couple of things. I mentioned these 3 paths of renewal of that first encyclical of Paul VI: doctrinal awareness, conversion through renewal through conversion, and then mission. All right. These are so interconnected. So one answer to that, I remember in one of the dioceses where I was talking to an archbishop, auxiliary bishops, priests, and deacons. We went through all this kind of stuff, and we got into a great conversation because, like many people, everyone's looking for a program that works, okay? And in my experience, up until relatively recently, most of the renewal programs were kind of pitched to the lowest common denominator of Catholics who are not all that active in the church. But what ends up happening is they don't come or participate as people who are taking their faith seriously, okay? But guess what? They end up still growing in their faith, even if they're going over it again, okay? Small group dynamics was a new discovery for many Catholics over the last number of years, and some kind of amazing things happened there. But the first point that I want to make is great homilists almost by instinct move back and forth among those 3. And so right now in any given diocese, you've got a lot of people that have not been catechized. They need to be evangelized, okay? You've got a lot of people who are catechized, but they need to be challenged to go deeper, to have a much deeper commitment to the Lord and to conversion. That would be the second path of renewal. You got a lot of people who are very well catechized, they've been praying, going on retreats, and right now they're ready to be called to service. There will not be any one program. The challenge at your average parish and diocese is, how do you meet the needs of those who are basically just getting started, those who are on the way but really need some, I'll call it generically, spiritual direction. If that means one-on-one with a priest or a bishop, obviously it's not going to work, but they need meaningful retreats and experiences where they can bridge the gap between faith and life. And then those who are ready right now, they need to be called and formed. Right there you have at least a division of 3. And it's very difficult to imagine any one program that's going to meet all the needs of those 3. And this is the real pastoral challenge. Now part of the answer to this is, that God is so gracious and generous with the church, I don't think he expects any one parish to meet everybody's needs. We have supra-parochial programs and movements, religious orders, and it's in Bible studies, and we have the Augustine Institute, you know, and so you wouldn't expect your parish pastor to take people through a master's program. We can do that for you. I go on and on, but you see the point. And so I hope we can get beyond the point of hoping that there's some silver bullet, some one program that is going to take us into a new springtime of the church. The church's fundamental service to humanity is the ministry of the word and her sacraments. That's her fundamental. Now, she has a third reality, which in my opinion is untapped, not completely, but underexploited, and that is community life. All right? Our families are so isolated, and amazing things, experience shows, happen when people form a meaningful community around common vocational realities. So it's very common for husbands and wives who send their children to a Catholic school to bond with other parents whose kids are at the Catholic school. This isn't rocket science, okay? But their vocation is to raise their children. That's what they're going to pray about. That's what they're going to talk about. So you need to have a support group for parents, all right, in your average parish. Well, you have another group, let's call them the seniors, okay? I mean, this is my message to seniors, okay? If you'll let me on your radio, I've got something I want to say to everybody who's 55 and older, okay? It is not, you've been paying your taxes, you put your time in, now be good to yourself. The message is, you've probably had 2 or 3 or 4 careers, the house is paid off, the kids are out of college, you're at the zenith of your earning potential, you've got the wisdom from life experience, we need you. This is the golden age of service, because you've got so much to give right now. But our culture is, would you agree, is sending a completely different message. Now, I've been saying this for 20 years, but I'm 60 now, and I'm talking to my peers. Okay? I think I've got what they call street cred. Okay? It's the gray of the beard in a way that I didn't before. But listen to the way our culture, for let's say, well-off, upper middle class, lower upper class Americans, retirement means having your place down in Florida. Or if you're in Minnesota, your lake cabin up north, which I already told you about. I'm going to tell you, there is a joy in serving and making a difference in people's lives that sitting there and fishing in northern Minnesota is never going to give you. And so we have got to, issue by issue, we've got to confront what our culture is saying. So I've taken younger couples, I've taken older people. Do you see the challenges of pastoral ministry in your average parish? How do you meet all these needs? Well, here's what I've learned. In every parish I've ever been in, among these young couples, there are some with leadership skills. They are so sewn together emotionally, spiritually, that not only can they raise their children, but they can give some extra time to kind of create an organization that supports their peers. Same thing for the elderly, the same thing for the handicapped. And we've got to, the only way to meet everybody's needs is to really believe that the Holy Spirit showers the church with charisms and identify who has the charism. You all represent a charism. You've been called to exercise whatever your gifts are, programming, faith, administration, fundraising, all of this through Catholic radio. It's a very important charism, and one of its definitions is it's supposed to support as many other charisms as possible. It's a supportive charism. So and that's your question. Who can you reach? Who's reachable right now? One last thing that I'll say, because I think this is going to come up. I agree with you wholeheartedly about the 7%. I mean, you won't be in business very long, right? Unless they're happy. Okay. But I wouldn't. I have my own way of understanding evangelization in the church. It floored the first pastor that I suggested this to. He had been reading John Paul II, and he wanted, what should I do for the new evangelization? And I said, upgrade the faith of your daily communicants. And he said, oh, you didn't understand the question. What can I do to get out those people that are only coming on Christmas and Easter? I said, upgrade the faith of your daily communicants. they go to the same banks, they go to the same recreation centers, they shop at the same grocery store. You're not going to reach them, Father. The chances of you reaching those people are zilch. But you can reach them through that core of people who already are the best formed. And they rub elbows with their neighbors to others. It sounds counterintuitive, but that's the only model that I've seen that has really worked and borne fruit in the church. And from the one to more is given, more will be demanded. Here's an interesting thing that spiritual directors find out, and so do all pastors. When it comes to pastoral service in the church, you never work yourself out of a job. Parents at least can look forward to that day when the children are young adults and they got their degrees and they're self-supporting, right? The more you give in the spiritual life, the more people's capacity to receive expands and the more they want. That is a law of the spiritual life. God always has more to give. And the more he gives, the more we're capable of receiving. At what point do we make a judgment that people have received enough now so that their way of receiving comes through active mission and service? There's an art to that discernment, but I'm convinced we need to be able to answer that question if we're really going to get fully ordered for the new evangelization. Does that make sense? Okay, then let's stop there because I think we're going to circle around to questions like this after lunch.